Hello, listeners. I like to play a game. Before you lose an iPad with 10 minutes of a white man podcast, the game is simple. You have to watch it all the way to the 10-minute mark. If you don't do that, we will feed your TikTok feed with AI live streams, and you will not escape from it. Live or die, your choice. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kinocast. My name is Ruben. I'm your host today, as always. Today we're going to talk about two films. Well, actually, one of us is going to talk about one film, but we'll get into that later. So we're going to talk about Saw 10 and Killers of the Flower Moon. And here today, I'm joined by Joy, joined by Ty, and Michael. And you're probably wondering if you're seeing this on YouTube, you're seeing a fifth frame. Well, that's the recording bot, who's annoyingly into my frame now, and I have to sometimes edit out. But anyways, we're going to talk about these films. And Joy texted me earlier that she didn't see Killers of the Flower Moon, which is fine. So we're going to talk about Saw X first, and then she can dip out for Killers of the Flower Moon. So yeah, let's start off with Saw 10. That came out this week in my country. Bit too late, because literally the day after it came out on streaming. But, you know, I'm glad I saw it in cinemas anyway, because I highly enjoyed Saw 10.
Yeah, Saw, for me, my experience with the franchise is a bit weird, because for the longest time, I'd usually just, I'd be watching I'd just be watching YouTube videos about the series, and over time, I rewatch them over and over again, whether it's background noise or just wanting to revisit them, to the point where the series has oddly been ingrained into my head in a weird way, like in a general sense. So I kind of have a good knowledge of kind of everything that's gone on up to this point. But then about a month ago, on a whim, because I was hearing some very good things about Saw 10, I decided to look up the Saw films on Netflix, and the first one happened to be there, and I watched it on a whim. So despite very well knowing it, it was only like almost a month ago when I actually watched the first Saw film for the first time. And I thought it was pretty good overall. You know, it's a classic. It's iconic, right? And I think watching this first film properly ended up being a good thing, not only to finally see this film proper for the first time, but also because Saw 10 chronologically is set between Saws 1 and 2. So it made for an interesting kind of segue for me, because a couple weeks later, I watched it in theaters after I'd seen Exorcist Believer, which we talked about last time.
Yeah, it's funny because Saw X is actually that takes place between 2 and 3.
Oh, 2 and 3?
Yeah.
It's 1 and 2, I think. It's like...
I'm pretty sure it's 2 and 3.
Directly before.
I heard it was 2 and 3.
I'm pretty sure.
You know what? I'm going to Google it right now.
Yeah.
I need a Jamie who can pull that up for the podcast, you know, just like the Joe Rogan experience. I'm just going to steal that. Hey, Jamie, can you pull that up?
I know you haven't seen 2, Ty, but there is like a very particular thing that I say do know like what happens at the start, where the cops come in.
Yes. Yeah, I have an idea of that.
So, the first news article I grabbed says it's before 2, so okay.
Yeah, because I think it would be very hard for it to be set saying that's like right as he kind of gets caught without spoiling it too much.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that and
I guess
his
that makes
health
sense.
as well.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Well. Yeah. Saw 1 and 2 is kind of like the gap between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. We could fit in a lot of John Kramer movies, guys. We could do it.
I was trying to think about that after I finished Saw 10.
Yeah, I agree.
What I liked about this is that if you're gonna watch this in chronological order, you're gonna have Saw 10 and Saw 3, which I think are the best of the franchise right about now. 2 movies that kind of play with John Kramer's morals, and I think Saw 10 is like it still does an excellent job with that. It's the same Saw we're used to seeing, but also different, meaning with like the structure, because the first like half hour is like this cancer story with John Kramer, which I did not expect to be laid out so perfectly well.
Yeah, it was
Definitely.
genuinely
Sorry.
it's okay. It was genuinely heartbreaking, like John's backstory. And it also just made me want, like, I don't know, I guess almost like spin-offs of just like random adventures. Like it's like let's see John and other, vacation destinations. I want to see him in the Caymans.
Total Drama Island, but it's John Kramer. Yeah, but we can still use the "From the Book of Saw" tagline that Spiral used. I think that's totally fine to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, God, I love that this, because if we don't get an 11th film, this perfectly feels like something to cap it off with. Because I think it's a swan song for John Kramer.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
it should have even. I think I'm fine with that being like the last movie. I know with the scene at the end that we can talk about later, but that they're probably going to follow that with like Hoffman and all that, maybe. But I think, yeah, like it is
if there's anything.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
If there's anything, sorry. If there's anything they can do, continue with Hoffman and Amanda. I would like to see those big lips tout on the screen from Hoffman. I want to see it in 3D. I want to get kissed by Hoffman in 3D.
Yeah, bring back Saw 3D. I mean, not the final chapter, of course, but just that format.
Yeah. No, imagine if you're walking into the theater, it's like a new Saw film, but it's just the 7th one again in 3D. I call that epic bad luck.
It's just like the backrooms of it. Just like trapped there forever.
I did not know that this film had a post-credit scene. I walked out of the cinema not knowing that there's a post-credit scene.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so I had to watch it on TikTok, filmed by someone's iPhone, not knowing that literally the next day Saw X would release on digital. And that's what I call epic bad luck.
Yep.
I'd probably rewatch that exact same TikTok that you've seen.
Yeah. It's funny because in the film, when they play Zepp's theme, it kind of feels incomplete, and the post-credit scene completes that. So in a way, the theme should have been an indicator of like stick around for the credits. I didn't, because I had to go home.
That's a good point. But then again, from my experience in the theater, when Zepp's theme started playing at that precise moment, that was just a really amazing kind of use of it to me. Like
fantastic.
The energy was just so good, especially kind of at the height of the layers, the twists that the series is known for, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Charlie Clouser returns as composer, or Charlie Clouser, but he returns as composer, and he has taken John Williams' record for composing the most franchise movies, because John Williams had 9 for Star Wars, and Charlie Clouser has 10 Saw films.
Yeah, and that's one thing I took a special notice of while watching is the score was actually quite good in an overall sense. Like, just the way the music kind of helped add to the scenes throughout, especially when it came to John's kind of the backstory in the first act of the film. I guess part of me kind of has this like, what's the word I'm thinking of here? A part of me really likes kind of like overly 2000s sounding scores in movies.
Yes.
Like the instrument. Like, I guess the example that comes to my head, and I think I may have mentioned this movie last time, is Old Boy, the original, because that score is one of my favorites of all time. And some of the some of the instrumentals he used in some of the more mellow tracks in that film's score, like they just have that perfect 2000s. I mean, I know it was in 2003, but still, like, it's just, I kind of have like a very soft spot for that kind of score. And I mean, with Saw being such a 2000s heavy franchise in terms of its origin and its peak, it was kind of great. It was great to hear that, and of course Sepp's theme towards the end.
Yeah, like that sort of aesthetic of like the early 2000s and all that, and like the grunginess and all that. Like Old Boy has like Old Boy does it a bit better, I suppose, but like it has like a very similar sort of like very disgusting and sort of like really like rustic, I suppose, aesthetic sometimes. And it's just like it's really like captured well, and like the X again, I think it's really well done. Like Saw X,
Yeah,
it really captured it. Yeah,
yeah, because it does feel like the old Saw in those 2000s ways. But one of the main reasons is that the director Kevin Grotard, he directed some other Saw films, but he was mainly the editor for a lot of the Saw films. So if there's anyone to bring back that style, it's him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he probably did. 6 is probably like one of my favorites actually, and then he did 7 as well. But I think the studio, But do you know what? I want to bring this up actually. Apparently, there's 30 extra minutes of footage in Saw X that isn't in the final cut. So,
I'm hoping for like an uncut version of Saw X because a lot. If you have these films on Blu-ray, you notice that all of the discs are like the uncut versions. So I'm hoping for like an extended uncut version. That would be cool.
Yeah, and the fact that the movie is already 2 hours, that's quite interesting that there's a whole half hour's worth of footage that is kind of left out in the theatrical version. Be interesting to see how that comes into play when it's all together.
Yeah, exactly. I want to see how it like plays into that film because it already feels kind of like a complete film here. Maybe it could have used a few extra minutes, but it honestly feels like there's nothing really missing. So it's interesting to see what would happen if they release an extended version of that film.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of something else to say about Saw X.
I have one thing to say.
Yeah.
I mean, like when it comes to the Saw movies, there's always things that people expect and like have, very fond interest over. Whether it be the look of the film or the style presentation, the traps, of course, and the effects. But one thing that kind of stood out to me, and I say this in like, because I mean, like writing the screenplays in these films, obviously with the films varying quality throughout the series, that the screenplay is, it's kind of hit and miss throughout into the franchise. I'd say, I feel like Saw X kind of does some interesting things, and I mean that beyond focusing on John and kind of his struggle and his kind of hope of getting better. Because I guess I'm bringing this up because one thing that it's not like a huge thing, but just the whole arc of sorts of Amanda caring for one of the trap victims, Gabriella, because she's a drug addict like she once was. That to me stood out. Like that was actually a really interesting bit of screenwriting and like a character for Amanda. Like I just thought that was a really interesting thing for them to do.
It really was, yeah.
Like I thought her and John and their dynamic as well great in it. I think the only thing is that you can definitely notice that they're a bit older, but like once you get into it, you really do not mind. Like how they
Yeah, I mean that's true. But then again, they they tried to make John younger with the baseball cap back in Saw 7.
True. Yeah, you should have returned with the baseball cap.
Oh,
it's so funny that they did the same thing in Spiral.
Oh yeah, I saw about it with Chris Rock and Sam Jackson's characters.
One thing that they definitely could improve for the next one is that haircut for Amanda. It's awful.
Yeah, I mean, then again,
it's got to be the worst haircut I've ever seen.
I mean, if I remember correctly, her hair in Saw 2 was also quite all over the place.
Yeah.
I know that kind of feels like it kind of leads into that in a sense.
I don't know. I thought in 2 her hair was like very much like the brunette in Tattoo. Like I thought, or Lady from Devil May Cry. Like I don't know. I thought it was cute. Like,
that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
What I wanted to say is that I really like that Saw 10 was a return to form in like a couple aspects.
Yes.
But especially with traps. And so like I don't know how in depth we can get talking about the traps, but just in a general sense of like Jigsaw going after people that like actually just pretty much deserve it. And I mean, like, John was so mad that he was essentially making Hoffman traps, which I thought was like very interesting. Like, yes, there was technically a way to escape from most of them, but the time limit that they were all under made it basically not possible.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of them were 3 minutes, and I don't know, like I kind of noticed that, and I think, well, that's all kind of samey. What
That's
if there
kind
was a
of
bit of
yeah.
variation? Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I think
I love.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think it's thematic. I think it was, because they made John feel like he was going to get extra time on his life. He just kind of
Yeah,
gave them
Oh
all like
yeah.
the shortest time possible. But I
yeah,
think it would also just fit into the theme of, how there have basically been themed Saw films. So like one was about like the horrors of healthcare, and then one was about like just corruption in a general sense.
yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and it's interesting to think about how like healthcare is so bad that the Saw franchise had to go back and have another healthcare themed movie.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one thing I wasn't too clear about is what Gabriella did wrong to John.
Well, I
Was
think
she in the operating room, or was she just lying?
no,
No, she just like made up the whole events. I think, yeah, like her whole family
Um,
situation and all that was just fake.
yeah. Although she did get one of the more like easier traps, so that's good for her.
oh,
You know,
third time. Yeah.
yeah,
Like you do see, I think it was really good. There were more the arc between Gabriella and Amanda as well, and sort of like how Amanda is a previous drug addict and how Gabriella is one too, and sort of she really feels for her. I think it really like because you know how she is in 3. She's like very angsty and very like she's making traps that are near enough to
yeah,
just kill people. And I think it's like
Yeah.
the whole moral thing of Saw is like how much of it is just them driven by revenge and how much is them thinking that they are actually changing these people and making a point. I think it's like quite interesting, like in between those two.
yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I was thinking, I can't believe that this film brought back the Mexico filter.
Yeah. The
That
yeah.
filter was
Well.
intense.
Definitely.
Honestly, did not hate it because it made it feel more like a film from that time period, like
Yeah,
a film from the like 2000s. I don't know. It definitely, I liked it a little bit.
it just fits in, you know. It's yeah, it makes it feel like an old film, especially with the opening logos with the Lionsgate and Twisted Pictures logos.
Oh
That he's
yeah.
like, oh, Saw is back, baby.
What was interesting to me, speaking of these old logos, is how kind of the modern nature of the title cards this time. Like both at the start and in the film, we just have these
Yeah,
fade-ins of the big bold letters Saw X, and it's quite different. Yet I felt like they still work, especially at towards the actually in both cases, start and end. They're both effective. In terms of the I guess the when they're dropped and just kind of segueing from the end of the opening scene or towards the end, right?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just really enjoyed this film. I just the way that the story started and happened, just this kind of revenge story for John Kramer. Because I didn't see any of the trailers, so I had no idea what it was going to be like. All I did know is like the eye suction trap,
Oh yeah.
because of the poster. Because it's a cool poster,
Mhm.
brings back the 2000s would scare the shit out of a child at a video rental store vibes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I just like the way that it was a revenge story because the other ones are mostly kind of like the people trying to escape, but also John Kramer and his story why these people are here. And this is
Yeah.
just really that revenge story.
Yeah, it's interesting how this is the first Saw film without the cop plot, because we had that in the
Yeah,
first film a bit, and then throughout the series it just kept getting more and more prevalent with these characters kind of continuing on, and then we get to Jigsaw where it's quite heavy, and then Spiral where it's all about that, and then now
yeah,
here we are with Saw X where it's basically just about John and the trap plot, and while also kind of the set using the first act to set up the victims and kind of lead us into the motivation, which is a very well done aspect here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how it took its time with it, really.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's more of that was cut out. If there's more about John before the traps, if that was cut out, maybe it could be that.
Yeah, and also I remember hearing a little bit of complaints about the first act feeling a little too long, a little too slow. And for me, I never really thought it was anything like super slow or super drawn out. It flowed steady and nicely, and it worked well.
Yeah, and it was just refreshing to see out of the Saw franchise, and I thought it's just perfect. Fits in.
Yeah, and on top of that, also having the first trap kind of still at the beginning, like you still start out and you go along steady in this first act. Yet we still get a taste of at least one trap pretty quickly. And can I talk about this first trap just a little more, or should I hold off?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, because I just thought it was interesting how like you had mentioned this eyeball trap was kind of the poster child for this film, and it's kind of like the leading image of it, and yet when we get to in the final film, it's it's not like a real thing. It's just John kind of seeing that kind of how that would play out because he's watching a custodian at the hospital about to steal from a patient who's in one of the beds, and then he just kind of you just like then we just jump right in, and first we think, wait, is this okay? John or one of his associates or apprentices, got the guy, and they're like, okay, we're just jumping right into it. But no, after the carnage is done, we just go right back, and then it's kind of like
good choice.
Exactly. It's interesting because in Saw 3D there was kind of this one dream sequence that was a trap, very basic sort of thing, and I guess here it's kind of like that again, except this time it doesn't play. It's not like, I guess it's hard for me to explain this, but like unlike that moment in Saw 3D, this moment, I guess it's just more to it. Like in Saw 3D, that moment was more just gratuitous. It was kind of there for the sake of that, and also for the 3D.
Yeah.
In Saw X, though, like there's kind of more weight to it in the sense that okay, here we are led into this trap, thinking okay, this is real, but then it's not, and then we see the guy make the right choice because John was kind of looking in, right? And it's interesting. It's like also John's morals being shown off in these opening minutes as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually really love that because it really gives you the insight into Kramer's mind a lot. Like you wouldn't like Saw must be one of the few franchises that like a horror that tries to make you sympathize with the serial killer. Not just
Definitely.
like yeah.
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 And sorry, go ahead.
Right. Or you can go.
I was just going to mention that once again, Tobin Bell is just really great in the film, especially here more than ever because of the emotional weight and kind of the further exploration of his character.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say it was, I don't know, 10 was weirdly emotional for me in a way that I was like not expecting it to be. Like I've been a fan of these movies for a very long time. I've seen all of them like a ton of times, but I guess that can relate to like things happening like in my personal life, but just kind of the first act really just makes you want John to get away with it so badly. Like, because I've gotten to the point where, like, I've come full circle on, like, John as Jigsaw, where at first I'm like, yeah, he's doing it to bad people. And then, like, I got a little older and I was like, wait, one of those bad people was a guy that just called out of work too many times. And, like, kind of shifted to seeing John as sort of, like, I guess almost like the ultimate Karen figure. But with this, it just kind of goes back to, like, I guess the older understanding of, like, how the character functioned. We're like, yeah, okay, there is some degree of pettiness to Jigsaw traps. But, like, for the most part, in this movie, he's going after people that are, like, so bad that, like, the traps are honestly, like, not even... the traps they deserve worse.
Yeah.
They deserve worse. And that made it very, I don't know, it definitely added a lot of fun for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the just the fact that we have that kind of shift towards the end, where it's the leader of the group, Cecilia, kind of gets that upper hand for a little while. That was an interesting shift, right? With another twist, and just also, I don't know if this is just coincidence, but I guess as I was watching the movie, I kind of was thinking to myself, like, I guess I don't know what made me think. I just had the thought of, like, long story short, like, like a child in one of these traps. Like, I just, the random thought of it popped up in my head earlier watching the films. Like, oh yeah, because these are all like bad people. But it's like, I don't know why. Like, I guess I was trying to think of, like, how would the franchise kind of continue on or somehow. But then they do go that extra mile, and they bring a child into this trap. They put John in one of his traps, and that's quite an like, that's pretty. I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss for words here, because it's just such a huge shift. Like, we don't really see this sort of thing, this kind of upper hand, compared to being enforced onto John Kramer of all people.
Yeah. Mrs. Peterson would probably be the worst backseat driver. She's like the backseat driver of a Saw trap. She'd be like, "Get to do that, do that, do that." Yeah, and I wanted to see her die badly. Unfortunately, we didn't see that, but
Well, it's kind of like she's kind of given a similar sort of thing to Adam, where, like, she's just kind of left there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I really did like Cecilia. I thought she was like a great, like, having Saw, like, basically in the movie called out for shit by another character directed to his face, and sort of how she gets the upper hand of him, and then how she gets the upper. I thought it was great, well done. Their dynamic, great, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the final twist happens, and then it's like, Kramer got it.
Yep, he knew. He planned it all out.
Good, so good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That whole finale, and just the fight and everything, and again Zepp's theme, and just it all clicked so well.
Yeah. Because at the start, it was like, okay, it's kind of weird that they're releasing this guy, that they're setting him free, and then at the end, it all made sense. It's like, oh yeah, that makes
And, and his place in the scam and the group and everything, right? It's very, very twisty, very, very entertaining.
Yeah, they really got everyone. They really got, which makes sense, because they researched everything, and it would, if you researched it, you would find out that about the people they've hired, especially the guy from the cancer group.
Oh yeah,
yes,
the post credits guy with his war wounds.
Oh yeah, and then God, that post credit scene. Watching it, because I had heard there was a post credit scene, and so I sat there, and I guess because Hoffman hadn't shown up, and I'm thinking, okay, he's probably in the post credit, and yet for some inexplicable reason, I was just really pumped seeing Hoffman here, because I guess because he hasn't been in any of these movies since Saw 3D, and now it's like, oh wow, he's back, and it's kind of it's cool, like, I just felt oddly pumped up seeing that moment.
Yeah, no, I love Costas Mandalore. He's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. What I was going to say is that I just liked how the implication that John was able to just come up with all of this in such a short period. Like, he was that mad that he could like that many traps under pretty much no notice.
I mean, if I went,
almost all of them went well.
If I went to, like, go to Mexico to have my cancer removed, pay a lot of money, and then it doesn't happen, I too would be that pissed that my, like, level would activate, where I would, like, this is when I start dreaming, I'm start writing that shit down. I'm gonna put them to real life.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I noticed.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, in terms of the kind of how quick his plan all came together, there was one moment when he's being driven to the facility. He's being shown some of the places in the taxi, and at one point they stop by a statue, and I they kind of hold on that for just like a little bit because John's looking at it, and it kind of comes back in a way because when we have the brain surgery trap, and then kind of the mask closes on the guy, sort of like the Venus flytrap trap, and just it's the same. It's the head of the statue, or one of the statues that John had seen on his way to the facility.
The brain surgery trap would be probably the hardest out of all of them because you get 3 minutes to open your skull. But then, if even when you're finished, because the one with Valentina, she just lost her leg. That guy is just missing a part of his brains. He was just, he saw it out. Imagine if you go to a hospital, it's like, hey, I need help. I opened my brain, and very like a huge chunk, specifically. I just saw it out, and I took a little brain out of it.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, my thing was, I was terrified that he was going to I guess cut a part that had to do with hand function or something. What if that happened? They were just, what do you do? You can't do anything. That trap was just.
It's totally like a blind guess.
Yeah, I had a similar thought where what if the party took out somehow or just suddenly changed him personality wise or something, or there's just all of a sudden shift in him, mannerism or look or just something. I kept thinking there'd be something along those lines that would just suddenly shift because he's taking a piece of his brain out of his own head, right?
Insane how John watched the operation and saw a little bit of the DVD, and then when he watched the DVD again, he clicked exactly on the moment of brain surgery.
Oh yeah, the one he had caught a glimpse of while on the operating table.
That's what happens when you use Disney DVD Fast Play. Press now to watch the movie or go to the menu. Disney DVD Fast Play will commence in 5 seconds.
A classic.
Absolutely.
The banger. So, does anyone have any final thoughts on Saw X?
I was actually going to say, they're doing the first half. I think there's a really interesting moment where it near enough looks like he wants to give up being Jigsaw. I don't know if that's what was going in his head, but where he's on the park bench and he near enough rips out a page before he finds out that everything's gone wrong. I thought that was a really good moment in the film and sort of building to how it builds that. And I do want to say as well, I like how much time they took in actually setting up the. Oh, sorry, I think there's something on my mic there.
Oh.
But setting up the. I could hear a bit static for some reason. Sorry, don't know what it was. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about the scene on the park bench.
Yeah, John was ready to have his Spider-Man 2 moment where he loses all his powers.
Oh, that was it. I love how it sets up them all being kidnapped. I thought that was because you get that in Saw, the first Saw. I don't really think if you get that. I think you maybe get that in one or two of the other Saws, but it's always that they're in the traps already. Whereas I always really like the scene in the original Saw with Adam, and he's taking pictures to try to see around the room. I really like that they did proper scenes where they were in the full costume, they were kidnapping people, and then setting it up for them to then be in the traps later. Thought that was a really good addition to the film.
There's also a great detail in those scenes how we kind of get a glimpse of who the characters really are. Matteo is actually a veterinarian, and then Gabrielle at the club alongside Valentina, or maybe those are two different clubs. I don't know, but and then Cecilia in her home. I just thought those are great ways to kind of for us to see their true colors, right, as they're about to be taken away and put in these traps.
Yeah, I also kind of liked how tense those scenes were watching them in the cinema. They're kind of traditional jump scary, but for Saw, I'm willing to make an exception. It's not as bad as The Exorcist Believer.
Honestly, after watching Believer and seeing this after, because I watched them both a couple hours apart. I don't think it was because of the huge contrast in quality and enjoyment that I really enjoyed this. It was just also a really entertaining film that really did a lot right to me, and I just had a really good time with it.
Yeah, I also think Saw has an excuse to do that, whereas Exorcist Believer doesn't.
Yeah, I mean that's just a legacy sequel trying to cash in on a
Yeah.
name, and then Saw, because you know in the 2000s
This?
I'd always hear that Saw was like it was kind of, you know, because these films were kind of annual for a while, and it was kind of like an event.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, go see the new Saw film, and that was what compelled me to go see Saw X, because it's like this is kind of my time to go see one of these films, you know, like a proper Saw sequel, not Jigsaw or Spiral, but Saw 10. Right, and Saw
Yeah.
X, and it was a great moment. It was a great. I mean, it wasn't like really packed in the theater because it was like a Friday late afternoon, and a couple weeks after the film came out here in Canada for me. But it was still a great time in the theater.
Yeah.
I think that's what I've always loved about the Saw movies as well. It feels like they're making the films for the fans rather than just making it for like to make money. You know, like all these guys coming back and all that, like Kevin Gruber and like Charlie Closer and all that. It does feel like they want to make these films. So
Yeah.
And also, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to go into the final verdict for this film, and then we move on to Killer of the Flower Moon. But yeah, Saw X. Oh yeah, Joy, you go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I was gonna say, to me, I genuinely just I enjoyed it. It felt like a love letter to the franchise while also adding like somewhat newer elements to it in terms of like, I mean, yeah, there's always been like character development and like humanizing elements, but like they really actually develop Amanda like as a character, you know, and like let us empathize with her for real, basically for the first time since she was put in the reverse bear trap. And that was, I don't know, that was really special to me. But yeah, you know, 10 out of 10 or X if you will.
X out of X. So Saw X, I highly enjoyed it. I like that it went back to its roots, and I also like that it tried something new. And this is something that more horror movies should do when returning to the big screen. Although I think Saw is more of a what do you call it, like a wiggle room to do that, whereas Exorcist Believer doesn't. But Saw X just does it right, and it's just very well. The amazing swan song for John Kramer. Wouldn't mind if he came back, but I think we should leave it at this. Maybe just voice cameos for like the next films, but Amanda Hoffman, that's what we should focus on for the next films. I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5.
I also give the film a 4 out of 5. Great, entertaining flick. Perfect for this Halloween season. Way better than Exorcist Believer.
yeah, honestly, it might be my second favorite Saw at the moment. After the first one, like it really just is a return to form. It's good to finally see Kramer in the forefront. You know, the action without it cutting between the B plot of the cops and all that, or having like flashback and all that. It's just really good to see him shine because he is a great actor as well, and he plays the character beautifully.
So I guess this wraps it up for Saw X. So we're gonna, tune in for Killers of the Flower Moon. So Joy hasn't seen it, so unfortunately she's gonna have to leave or mute her computer. I don't know what you're gonna do.
Yeah, I mean, I may. Yeah, I'll leave just to not get spoiled. But thank you for having me on. I appreciated this a ton. It was also nice to meet both of you because I don't think I've chatted with either of you before.
It was great to meet. Great to talk to you as well.
Yeah, it was great to meet you.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Joy, and I'll see if you're on the Drive episode, I think.
Yes,
so
I was gonna say,
see you then
for the Drive episode for sure, and I'll try to have video for that one.
Yeah, nice. All right, see you, Joy. So, Killers of the Flower Moon. I saw that yesterday, actually. So it's a hard film to put down on note. I'm not sure what I quite thought of it. It's not saying that I hated it. I actually thought it was really good. It's just that like it's not what did you say? it's not like a blast like other Scorsese films is. It's very serious, very well written and acted, and it's kind of like you feel the movie with its length. It's long.
Absolutely. So I have a little something, just a little special here, which I'm just going to slowly bring into frame here.
Yes,
so
you got the book.
Yeah, I got this book a couple years ago. I read it in the spring of last year in preparation for this movie, which was quite a while ago. I guess that was back when I thought if the film would be out last fall, but then got pushed back. So while the novel's like a little bit hazy in my head, I still have a good feel for it. I really enjoyed the novel. It's a great read, very harrowing, especially towards the end. And I was very interested to see how it would be adapted into the film, especially when it was revealed that, because the book is, I mean, yes, we have the large focus on Fairfax and the Osage people, but also the book focuses heavily on the FBI's formation. Like there's stuff with J. Edgar Hoover and Tom White. While in this film, there's much more of a focus towards the Osage and towards the people of Fairfax, while the stuff with Tom White and the FBI is very minimal. And so I was curious to see how the film would kind of take that shift and just all the other changes and alterations made, and it made for a very interesting watch after all this time.
Yeah, I was meaning to read the book for this one. I just didn't. I didn't have the time. I should do that for other films because Scorsese likes to base his film off of books, so maybe the next one. But I saw that I saw this book at a train station, and I nearly picked it up. But I should definitely get into it. But I've got a lot of books to read, man.
Oh, same.
Especially with school and all that.
Yeah, especially. I'm a very slow reader myself. A book that's like 280 pages, 300 pages. It honestly takes me like 2-3 weeks, sometimes even a month.
Yeah, I've been a very slow reader these last couple of years, but ever since I joined back to school after a very long break, it's just been so much reading. Like these novels, like I've had to basically read 2 novels at once. And I've got more, and it's tough, like with all the deadlines and stuff. But I'm just kind of taking it comfortably, even if I'm falling behind, because I really don't want to rush myself in reading these books.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So, this film is definitely gonna get some Oscar nominations for sure.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a tough competition between this and Oppenheimer. I'm not sure which other films.
Yeah.
Maybe Saw 10, of course.
Saw 10.
Tobin Bell for Best Actor. We can do it. We can make it happen. Tobin Bell, Best Actor 2024. So I'm pretty sure 100% that Lily Gladstone is going to get an Oscar for this one.
I see it too. Absolutely.
She is amazing in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Unless someone is making a biopic. If there's a biopic starring a female, that's gonna win because the Oscars love that. So it's probably gonna go to whoever plays Priscilla Presley in Sofia Coppola's Priscilla.
Oh boy. Oh man.
I didn't make any notes for this film because I was watching it in cinemas and I don't bring my notebooks to the cinemas to write down. It's just hard putting my train of thought in this film. Definitely one thing I could.
Sorry.
Definitely one thing I could say is that if you're planning on seeing this film, see it when the Taylor Swift movie is not playing, because this movie is very quiet and you will hear the Taylor Swift movie playing.
I heard about that after I'd seen the film, and for me, I'd watched it at a screening at 1:45 in the afternoon, and there were some people there, but then like this was still during the day, and like a lot of the younger people had school or occupied, and so it was kind of a blessing that like I didn't have to, I didn't have anything like that happening. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I saw
you're sitting there, you're sitting there for that moment during the storm scene, and you just hear Taylor Swift coming from the nearby theater. Oh my God, what a weird thing that would be.
I saw this on a Sunday morning, so I was pretty sure I was the only young person there. It was filled with all elderly people, and thank God Taylor Swift wasn't playing next to me. But it's something I've heard online. It's a hilarious phenomenon. But yeah, I'm glad that I didn't watch this film at 9:30 because then I would have fallen asleep.
Yeah,
respectfully,
Mhm.
but yeah, I saw this in the morning, and yeah,
I had to plan out last Friday for me because just not only did we have a new Scorsese film, but I mean we have something like Spider-Man 2 had come out, so I
oh
basically had set it
yeah,
up so like I was gonna go see this
I
3.5 hour movie, pick up my copy of the game, come home and start playing
I
it, which is also funny because of the whole thing with Scorsese and superhero films, you
yeah,
know. But
I have an entire October horror list which I've been neglecting this weekend because I've been playing Spider-Man 2, and I finished it.
oh my god,
Oh,
I'm still way behind. Like, I played a lot Friday night, but the last 2 nights I've been so busy with stuff. I just play for like an hour late night, and my sleep schedules just because I played so
Over
little.
this
It's so bad.
weekend, I've played 25 hours of Spider-Man 2.
Oh my god,
I
I'm
want to
definitely
play that game
playing more.
so bad, but I don't have PlayStation 5, like, so I'm gonna have to wait for PC.
Ah,
Raging.
well, you hear it, everyone. Subscribe to the Patreon and get this man a PS5.
Let's do it. Yeah. So, so watching Kills of the Flower Moon, yeah, like there's I was probably one of the youngest people there. I believe
Yeah.
because there was a lot of older people there, especially kind of the kind of afternoon, right? Not too early or too late. So it was a moderate showing for the attendance. I mean,
Yeah. So how did you guys do with this film without intermission? Because my cinema has like an enforced intermission
oh,
every film. So I luckily had a 15 minutes break. But even
I
without the break, I could have done it easily. Actually.
Yeah,
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
it kind of breezed by for me. I think there was maybe two moments where I kind of noticed, oh, this is maybe like, how long is this through? But it really like, I really didn't mind the length at all. Like I was really, really into it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mentioned to you, Ruben, last week about how I had kind of been, slowly watching these really long movies in theaters last year and this year, like Inland Empire, but I was
Yeah.
afraid I saw Babylon
Mhm.
twice, and then last week I watched Seven Samurai at home, which is also 3.5 hours. So it was kind of like this building up, like a sort of an endurance or tolerance, even though these
Yeah.
movies are very good to sit there for 3.5 hours. And I actually made sure that I wasn't going to like need to take a bathroom break and because I was very careful because I just had a bottle of water with me for any sort of drink and I
Yeah.
actually ended up being very good, like I didn't have to leave or anything, and I also felt like it oddly breezed by, like, and I had one or two of those moments where it's like, okay, you feel
Yeah.
the length all of a sudden, but otherwise it breezes by in comparison to a film like Oppenheimer, which is 3 hours, but that film to me, and this is my own personal belief, it just the pacing of Oppenheimer, like I feel like that kind of made the length more felt, but while in Killers it's longer and
I
it's much
actually,
slower. But
Yeah.
to
yeah,
me, I actually didn't feel the pacing of Oppenheimer at all in the second watch. But so that's a funny thing
I
to be
guess
swapped around.
for me, Oppenheimer's pace, I guess as I kind of view it, I view it as like it feels like a 3 hour montage. It's just it keeps going and going, and there's like only a
Oh
few
yeah,
those breaks. Like I guess I wasn't like the biggest fan of the pacing. I still really enjoyed it though. But I
yeah.
guess in comparison though, like Killers, yeah, oddly breezed by in a sense.
Yeah, what helps with this film is the editing by the wonderful Thelma Shoemaker.
Oh yeah.
Still
Yes.
editing, still going, fantastic woman.
Mhm.
Um, the film kind of is structured like the regular Scorsese film because when you're starting the film, the startup, it's basically if you compare it to like Wolf of Wall Street and Goodfellas, so you have like this is where everything starts to build up and we have it good, and then something bad happens and then everything goes downhill.
You could argue
That's
that in a sense for the opening with the oil. I mean, like, yeah, the Osage are all of a sudden
Yeah,
finding themselves in this position, but then that leads to what happens throughout the rest of the film. Sorry, you were
yeah,
gonna say, Michael.
yeah. I was gonna what I think it really how he did it really played to his sensibility where it's near enough a gangster film but with like larger moral implications of it. So they're what they're doing to those size people, how they're stealing their money and largely like how you're focusing on a character that is like that does love one of these or like does love his wife, but he at the
yeah,
same time is like butchering her family. just so they have so they can get the oil money from it. And it's so just impactful and bleak, and just to think that this is a true story, isn't it? It's just mad.
Yeah, it's insane. Jesus Christ, America! It's how they quietly just eradicate the Osage people, but also dull their bloodlines with white blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a moment in the film where that was mentioned by, I think it was Molly's mother. I think Lizzie Q who mentioned it.
Yeah, she did.
Mm-hmm. One thing about the film that I thought was interesting was kind of the structure, I guess, in comparison to the book, especially because in the film, we have the opening, and then we kind of meet with Ernest and his him meeting with his uncle William Hale, and how just from I was surprised kind of just from the beginning how blunt of their intentions were, especially that kind of first main conversation between Ernest and William about William, telling him to, about marriage, and then kind of leading him towards Molly. When in the book pretty much starts with the stuff with one of Molly's sisters, Anna Brown. I was actually just looking through that again, how the book starts is so different. It's kind of like a mystery in a sense of, and then, but here it's quite open, which is kind of, it's disturbing in its own way, just how open the film is about this intent, kind of like how someone like William is kind of orchestrating all of this, especially with someone as morally conflicted like Ernest, kind of being torn between both sides, right?
Yeah.
I really love that about the film. I'd really want to read the book as well. But it's how because the FBI come in so late, they then fill in the blanks, and then you are left with, you go through everything with Ernest and how, again, how he's treating this whole situation, and how kindness sort of passes tendrils around those size people, but then how both people sort of feel about each other as well. It's very conflicting at times. It's just quite a hard watch at times as well. So
I enjoyed the soundtrack for this film, and I quickly did a Google to who did the soundtrack, and it's a pretty unfamiliar name to me, Robbie Robertson. But apparently he passed away on August 9th, but the score for this film was completed, and I really enjoyed the score for this film.
I love the score. It's so good.
Honestly, because I guess when you think of music in Scorsese films, you think of all the rock and kind of the contemporary music, the Rolling Stones, the Goodfellas, all that, and you kind of, I remember reading a couple jokes.
I was surprised Gimme Shelter wasn't in this film.
Exactly. I read a couple jokes online about how is he going to get that sound like that in this film? But then you hear the music in this film, and it's it kind of goes for that sort of rocking sort of motif, not anything like the classic rock of those films, but it's great. The instrumentals is great, and also the some of the more I guess quieter themes, especially in terms of kind of weaving through a bunch of the scenes, right? I guess I was listening to it a night or two ago, but there's this one track that plays throughout it a lot, and then I guess I mean these couple tracks, especially that one that kind of is trying to build. Actually, I don't. So I'm having a hard time describing the instrumental, but it's kind of there, stitched through a bunch of the scenes. It's often used in the movie, but it works, right?
It does work. Yeah, it's well placed. It's effectively placed.
Yeah.
So Brendan Fraser was marketed heavily for this film, but he's barely in it. Although his performance in this is pretty good. But I think John Lithgow should have also gotten that thunder that Brendan Fraser got.
Yes,
Brendan got that. Brendan got that thunder because he literally won an Oscar. But John Lithgow, that was one cameo I was surprised seeing, and he was also pretty good in this film.
Mm-hmm. I made a joke on the the Kinoplex Discord last night because based on a thought I had after watching this, because I made it was the joke. It was me asking who played the better antagonistic lawyer this year, Brendan Fraser in this film or Jason Clarke in Oppenheimer. Because they're both for however brief they are within the grand scheme of both films, their presence is the magnitude is undeniable.
Massive. It's I love the scene where they're all bringing Ernest to Hale's house, And it's like, you stupid boy.
But then the trailer for this film came out. We have that tension and the repeated use of the line about the wolves, and that shot showing up at the end of that show was chilling, especially when you know the whole story. But seeing it here, especially because they had the exact same shot, a little different during the I guess it's the flogging scene. Just seeing that same shot in the sense of the composition, the lighting, the room, but it's filled with all the characters who are in on this scheme. It's seeing that, especially leading up to what's going on between Ernest and W.S. Hamilton, Fraser's character. It's it's chilling.
Yeah, cinematography for this one as well was just there's like a couple of very cool shots in this. One when they're all working on the oil oil refinery, and there's like the people with the pickaxes, and like the fire is like blurring the vision. It's a very good shot.
The shots in that scene, whether it's Ernest and Molly inside, or the shot of William, and you see the flames, and it's kind of like it's almost like rippling his image, kind of to heighten who he is on the inside. And one of the other shots where we see, I think it's when Ernest is being driven to William's home, and then like the camera just zooms out, and we see all these machines kind of working to get the oil, and just how many of them they are. Like, that is an especially great shot in this film.
Yeah. Anyone else really taken aback by the small cameo Jack White made in this film?
Yes, I was going to mention that. That was just like
crazy.
Like, is it Jack White? What the hell is he doing?
It is Jack White. He's on the credits. Yeah, it's like insane. Also, Martin Scorsese's cameo at the end.
Oh my God.
That was
I like
so
his cameos.
I was more. I'm not super familiar with Jack White, so I missed his cameo. But I guess I was already swept off my feet, figuratively speaking, by that finale, and then seeing Scorsese come and deliver those final words, like that whole scene was already such a great way to, because these kind of true story movies or biopic movies, they tend to end with kind of like these bits of text, a few of them, but what Scorsese does here is something truly brilliant, where like he just goes, we just had that shift, we have this sudden flash forward to what I can presume would be the late 30s, maybe 40s, I'm just guessing here, but just that whole shift where it's like, okay, well, now we're in the guise of like a radio show being recorded live, and then Scorsese just stepping right up onto that stage and reading Molly's obituary was just, oh God, it was just amazing.
Fantastic.
I want to read. I'm skipping to the end of the book, you guys. I'm still listening, but
it really is a brilliant moment.
Yeah,
but no, it's a fantastic way to wrap that up. That's really well done. I like that a lot.
One thing I want to... Sorry.
No, you go ahead. I was just saying what I was thinking, but I wasn't thinking anything. That was the problem.
I guess one thing I wanted to mention when it comes to the film, the book, is we have a few select points in the film where photographs are being taken, and we kind of cut to those black and white still photographs. And I couldn't help but remember, because it's been a while since I read this book, if any of those photographs that were taken in the film were recreations of photographs that appear in the book, because there are photographs in black and white that appear in the book, whether it's like the Osage, whether it's Fairfax or the Osage, or trying to see if I can find any that were.
I wonder if they actually use the old cameras to make those type of photos, because it honestly looks convincing. Because a lot of films would just do a lazy filter over it, but this looks like the actual old cameras.
Yeah, just the whole attention to detail in this film is just excellent, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was thinking that just like while watching the scene, are these recreations?
Yeah, it's a lot of like accurate details, and especially the Osage people, they really wanted to make sure that was as accurate as possible. Representative on set. Actually, the language done right. So yeah, they did that very well. That's something I also this could also easily win, like probably best production design or.
Oh yeah, one thing. That. When watching this film, because the budget apparently is like around 200 million or something of that sort. I don't know the exact figure. I could be wrong here, but just when watching this film, you see where that money went when in comparison to all these other films with such huge budgets that just are CGI schlock, and yet you have something like this where you really see where the money went into.
You see where the money goes.
exactly. And it's crazy.
Apple was right to play into this and buy this. It's funny because in this era of streaming, you see a lot of studios buying, or like streamers buying big names. Apple buying Scorsese, Netflix having a deal with David Fincher, for instance, that's wild.
Because
there's a lot of money into this.
I think Napoleon is Apple as well.
Ridley Scott, Apple as well.
Napoleon. The trailer for that played before my screening of Killers,
Same.
and like both these Apple original films, like Apple swooped in and put a lot of money towards these, and I guess it just kind of goes to show that they're kind of striving for quality, because like generally what I hear from the Apple streaming original stuff is there's a lot of good high quality stuff, whether science fiction or shows like Severance.
Yeah, although it's one of those things where it's like, holy shit, a giant cast, good names. I'll put it on my watch list to get around to it eventually, meaning never.
Yeah.
The budget was 200 million, and Apple's just making so Napoleon has a budget of 130, so they're doing money.
Huge movies in terms of the budget, but they're also from very
it's good that they're It's also good that they're releasing these into cinemas as well, alongside streaming.
I was worried that these would just be like streaming only or something. I mean, because The Irishman, that was Netflix original, that was pretty much on streaming only, and it eventually got a Criterion release, but
it also got a select cinemas release. Even here, I didn't see it in cinemas, unfortunately, but it did get select screenings.
Right.
I think Killer is the same. Is that the right word for it? The David Fincher movie, because I know it's only in select cinemas.
It's also playing in my country, and my rule of thumb is if it's playing in my country, where releases sometimes get delayed, then I'd say it's kind of an open release, but with a short window, I think.
Wait, sorry, the Killer?
The Killer. David Fincher.
I had seen there's a theater out in Vancouver that plays a bunch of art house and stuff, all these more obscure films, old and new, and I actually found out they are doing a couple showings of The Killer at the very end of the month, early November. So I guess that's another factor, playing into these select screenings.
Yeah. So let me think about Killers of the Flower Moon. What else there is to say? It's just
one.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, this is just, one of the going into this film, because I had avoided the trailers for the most part for this movie. I'd seen the infamous table still, because that's all we knew for the longest time, and other bits here and there. But when I saw
did you think he looks unrecognizable in that one? He looks totally unrecognizable in that picture, right? Right?
Yeah, that frown really changes Leo's face. When I saw a trailer for this film before Exorcist Believer screened, and to me, that trailer was so well done, and honestly, it was the most I felt out of anything in that whole Exorcist screening. I'm talking the whole screening, trailers and this movie. But one thing that really stood out to me was because one of the biggest scenes in the film is the house explosion of Bill and Rita Smith, and that reading that in the book was already such a huge point, this is the true extent to all this bloodshed and devastation. And so when they showed a little shot of that in the trailer of the camera salute,
and I honestly wish they didn't show it in the trailer.
God, that it really clicked to me then, oh my God, this is them putting that to film, this moment, and seeing it in the final movie, it's just as gruesome and terrifying as in the book, reading it from the perspective, them just suddenly being awake by this explosion and everything.
Yeah, they're still finding bits of them as well. It's geez.
There's the slight bit of gore in that scene that was because just really effective, the whole thing.
Yeah, it's like brutality used right, or gore used right in a film like that.
Yeah,
both all the instances of the sister dying really hit home sort of how tragic and sort of how Molly felt, and sort of it really did make it brutal enough that you did just feel every every death that happened to her, and sort of like, in a way, I think my only complaint is wish it did have more of Molly's perspective, but that's like the only thing that's the only real main complaint I would have with like the film.
Yeah, I wish we had a little bit more, because she kind of takes a back seat around the third, all this like the end of the second act where like when the insulin comes in, you know.
Yeah, because at that point, she's essentially being poisoned by what's being added to her insulin, and that kind of takes her out for a while. And I think at that point in the book, that's kind of when the FBI perspective really comes into play, and then we just kind of focus on Tom White through much of the second half of the book, I think. But yeah, I guess one thing I kind of thought, just I don't know, part of me felt like, I guess when I first saw it, like coming out of the theater, I kind of thought that the whole shift of part of me kind of felt like it was a little like conventional in the structure, just a little bit. In a sense, I guess it was just like a feeling, you know. Like I guess I expected something more in the sense of this, you know, adaptation or depiction. But then again, I gave it some more thought. I you know, understood and respect how, like, you know, they'd want to show it as kind of grounded and real as possible, you know, in spite of the ending, and how that was kind of my feeling. But I think a rewatch could really solidify and help work through my feelings about this film, because even though I'd sat there the whole 3.5 hours straight watching this thing, it was hard for me to really put my thoughts together in in terms of what thing, because I write reviews on Letterboxd pretty much all the time. It was hard. It took me over like a day to write it out and really think about it.
Yeah, the only thought I had for this film was like, Jesus Christ, America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just to me, though, it's a great film. Like easily one of the best of the year for me.
Yeah, no, definitely
undoubtedly.
In the top. Yeah, it's very well made. Anyone have any final thoughts on the film?
I guess one thing I had just to mention, because like this is a joint between Apple and Paramount, and it's interesting that even, you know, you can presume Apple put a lot of money into this film. That here's Paramount kind of, in a sense, kind of taking another bit of a risk, because Babylon was $80 to $100 million movie that flopped, and I love Babylon. I saw that twice in theaters, and I'm thinking, okay, I just Paramount kind of.
I just think that what's it called? I just think that you know, Damien Chazelle is not a big name as Scorsese. You know,
true.
I think the elderly people who will go to the movies on Sunday will watch a Scorsese film over Damien Chazelle.
It's funny you mention elderly people, because when I went to see Babylon for the second time, it was the final screening my local theater was doing, and it was literally me and two other people. And then when we get to the scene with Tobey Maguire, the two people had got up and left, and I got to see through the silhouette that these were two much older people. So I'm thinking, my God, these two may or may not have known what was coming, and they sat through everything up to that point, especially up to a point of like the scene with Tobey Maguire, you know. I was like kind of blown away over just realizing that. Man.
Yeah. So Killers of the Flower Moon, very well made film. It's one of those films where it's like, it's so good. You don't have any complaints, but you wouldn't rank it a 5 out of 5 either. For me, we kind of lay like 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5. Like, there's some films that I enjoy better this year, but not on a technical level, because on a technical level, this beats a lot of films that I have. But on an enjoyment, like, I don't think you can enjoy this film. You can just really marvel at its, like, the storytelling of this film. So, for me, it's 4.5 out of 5.
I also gave the film a 4 out of 5. I mean, like, it's a great film. There's so much to really appreciate in terms of the filmmaking and every aspect that went into it. And yet, when I was putting this in my list of Martin Scorsese films to rank, I just stared at that list after adding Killers, and I was like, I can't put this any higher, because now I've now seen 6 Scorsese films. This, King of Comedy, Goodfellas, Wolf of Wall Street. one or two others. I can't remember, but I couldn't bring myself to raise it any higher than these films. Not because it's a bad film, but because all these other films, like, they have such a legacy. Taxi Driver, Wolf of Wall Street, like just these 5 or so Scorsese films. But it's still a great film. It's still one of my favorites of the year.
Did you mention Casino?
No.
Did you see that?
I have not. I need to get to that one day, but the 5, Wolf of Wall Street, Taxi
Irishman?
Driver, Goodfellas, Irishman. There we go, and King of Comedy. That's the 5 I've seen.
Yeah. One Scorsese I always recommend. I always plug is Color of Money. That's a good one.
Oh yeah.
Well, like the main, I suppose, like before I go into my final thoughts, I really want to say I think this year is really interesting for like morally complex character films. Like there seems to be a lot of character stories like Napoleon, Ferrari, Oppenheimer, and then you do have Killers of the Flower Moon as well, like complex, like based on real life, based on real stories, focusing on these very complex characters. I think it's a really interesting year for that in a sense. But I really need to think further on Killers of the Flower Moon. I really want to rewatch it. I thought it was brilliant though. I really loved I know it is very conventional, sort of how it was told some ways, but like I think it really did fall into Scorsese's sensibilities of how he kind of made it like more of a gangster film nearly, and like how like much more morally complex it is because you're thinking of those people and how much is taken from them. And like everything adds to that as well. How he portrays real life, the realism to that. I'm trying to think of what else as well. I think I would have liked to see more of the FBI and would have liked to see more of like them coming in and all that. That would have been good. Yeah. But I think the level of what they have there and sort of focusing on Ernest, focusing on like Kane, focusing on Molly first, really worked for me. Like it will probably I need to see more Scorsese. Like I haven't seen Casino. I've seen so much of Wolf of Wall Street that I haven't actually seen the full thing in one go. Sadly, yet. I've seen Kind of Comedy, and I really like Cape Fear. I'm trying to think of like other ones like Taxi Driver and all that. And it was like ranked quite highly, but I think it's for like how him like telling this really. I think it feels very personal to like what he wants to, the story he wants to tell as well from it. Because I think it's a very important story, especially seeing like a lot of Native Americans are often forgotten about, sort of like in American history as well.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, there was just kind of one last thought I wanted to really bring up about it's about the credits, because so there I was sitting in the theater as the film kind of concluded, and like not even a moment later, everyone who was in this theater, and it wasn't like a packed theater, keep in mind, pretty much everyone had left. I looked around and I was the only one there. And so as the instrumental fades out after the opening part of the end credits, something kind of amazing happens as we hear the sound of storms. And we're just, if you're sitting there in the theater, it's kind of like, you're, if you, to be quiet, to just kind of be still. And in a sense, it's kind of like an opportunity to think about what you've just seen. And I think it's a really great way to kind of call back to that moment with Molly and Ernest earlier in the film. I just thought it was brilliant, the fact that I was the only one still here. No one, everyone else had left. No one, even if I don't even know if anyone else would have had that same thought or realization I did. But I was just the only one there, and I just sat there, and I just kind of that decision in how that the credits played out like that was it was brilliant, a perfect kind of footnote to cap off this whole thing.
Yeah. So I guess that wraps it up for this episode. It's just 2 fantastic films of the year. Thank you all for listening. Next week we'll be back, and we're going to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's, which will be out soon. Hopefully I'll see it this Thursday. So yeah, thank you all for listening. You can help us out by subscribing, liking, or just sharing, or even go the extra mile and subscribe to our Patreon, which is in the link. So thank you all for listening, and see you all next week.